Opposition Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Chief Minister. Chief Minister, before the election you promised Territorians they would lead a transparent and open CLP government. In the last 50 days, you have backflipped on your commitment to hold an inquiry into the police, broken a promise to release major details of a gas supply deal and increased the rents of government employee housing by 25%. We have also heard nothing about your promised lobbyist register. Chief Minister, when you were in opposition, you demanded a high standard when it came to transparency and accountability. What are you going to do to live up to your own expectations and your standards?
Chief Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I thank the opposition leader for her question. And she's right, we promised not to be like the previous Labor government, who was sent a very clear message by Territorians that their behaviour was totally unacceptable and that their positioning went against what the community believed in. And in stark contrast to that, Madam Speaker, we put forward a team and a plan to rebuild the Territory going forward. And that plan centred very clearly around reducing crime, which is why in the Parliament over the last week and a half we've seen very strong deliverables by a CLP government who is backing in the Territorians who want to live in a safe community. And that is why our reducing crime package has been so significant and so important over this last week and a half. We also committed to go to the opposition leader's point around backing in our police. And on the first day, that Sunday after the election, I met with the police commissioner and I told him that we unreservedly back our police, that we have to do everything we can to make them feel supported and deliver on community safety. And it's very interesting that the opposition leader would now somehow try and seek to manipulate what the CLP did in opposition around calling for a police inquiry, when it is her and her government who were the ones who consistently voted us down in this Parliament from that happening. Now, let me be very clear, Madam Speaker. From opposition, we wanted there to be an inquiry into our police force, and we dragged Labor kicking and screaming to reluctantly and eventually do the police review, the Vince Kelly review. Now, that review was paid for by the taxpayer. That review took months, if not, it might have even been over a year, Madam Speaker. It took a very long time. There was significant consultation and a product was produced. A report was revealed by the then Labor government, of which the CLP responded at the time from opposition, supporting 15 of those 18 recommendations. And that review is now being implemented by police and has been being implemented by police since Labor was in government. So to call another review on top of the reluctant review that Labor had would just be a ridiculous duplication in process and in cost. And when we have a police review now, albeit years after the CLP asked for it. But Madam Speaker, I think this is just a clear example of, again, the opposition scrambling to find their relevance at the moment, Madam
Minister,
Speaker.
what's your point of order, opposition
Standing
leader?
Order 110, relevance. Madam Speaker, the question also asked about the promised lobbyist register, which the Chief Minister has not answered yet.
You have the call, Chief Minister.
Thank you, and I'm very happy to speak to the lobbyist register because we did commit that we would deliver one, and that work is already underway, and we will bring that back and implement that policy once that work has been completed. And unlike Labor, who refused to deliver a lobbyist register, I mean, the irony is not lost on Territorians that you're holding us to a different standard than you held yourself.
Supplementary, opposition leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Part of the question around the CLP government's commitment around transparency and accountability. Chief Minister, you also promised to release the details of a major gas supply when you came to government. You've now backflipped on that. Can you please explain that to Territorians?
Little gymnast over there, backflipping.
Are you happy to take that,
Yeah,
Chief
I'm happy
Minister?
to take that question, Madam Speaker. Again, the opposition leader, a government minister at the time that gas supply deals were done, They did not make that public. I mean, perhaps Opposition Leader, you can enlighten Territorians as to the cost of those deals, because we certainly, we made a very clear commitment that if that information was able to be made public, we would make it public. Now, it was Labor who did a commercial in confidence deal where that information cannot be released. Now, in the fullness of time, we're certainly hoping we can put more into the public domain about this. But I think what's even worse, Madam Speaker, is the fact that the reason we've had to do these gas deals is because Labor has completely dropped the ball on securing the Territory's energy supply. And that's why we're in this crisis situation in the first place, Madam Speaker.
Member for Blaine.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Chief Minister. Chief Minister, the CLP government delivered on its major election commitment last week, passing Declan's Law and urgent crime legislation, which included the creation of new offences for ram raids and posting and boasting, as well as returning the age of criminal responsibility back to 10. Chief Minister, can you please update the House on how the CLP's newly passed laws will help keep Territorians safe?
Chief Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and to the member for Blaine, because I know, being out in your community in Palmerston with you, that people care very, very deeply about community safety, and people just want to live safe. They want to have a safe environment for their children to grow up, their kids to go to school, to be able to go to the shops, and not spend their whole lives dominated by, have I parked in the right spot? Am I going to come back to a car with a smashed window? Is everything going to be okay? Are we going to be broken into tonight? And that's why we have delivered our almost finished delivering our reducing crime package, member for Blaine. And it started last week with Declan's Law, and of course Samara Laverty joined us here in Parliament for that momentous and historic occasion. And Declan's Law it had a wide-scale reform to bail laws. And this was about delivering more consequences for people who do the wrong thing, creating a stronger test for our judges to make sure that they're not putting back out on the streets people who present an ongoing risk to our community. It was about making sure that we target repeat offenders, people who've consistently and in an ongoing way, refused to abide by the laws of our community, and also around knife crime, so expanding police powers for wanding and making sure that they're much more flexibly applied so that our police can do that really, really important proactive work. We also then, of course, went through and passed laws around ram raids, standalone offence for ram raid. And we know that there have been, since the 1st of July, Madam Speaker, 26 ram raids on commercial premises and 6 on police vehicles. 6. Just since the 1st of July, which is absolutely abhorrent. So we're proud to have delivered for our police a standalone offence where police can easily charge people for that offence, and we can hold people accountable for these crimes. Equally with posting and boasting legislation, and we even saw some of those ram raids that we've seen over the last few weeks where the perpetrators of those crimes have been posting their crimes on social media. And so again, giving police another opportunity, another law to act as a deterrent, to stop people committing crimes in the first place, but also to then deliver consequences for offending, is our posting and boasting legislation. And of course, much has been said around lowering the age of criminal responsibility, but what those opposite don't want to accept is, under their approach, these kids were almost certainly destined for an adult correctional facility later in life. And they ignore the fact that since the 1st of July, member for Blaine, and your community will be interested in this data, there have been more than 104 instances involving youths aged 10 and 11. That's in the Commission of Crimes, 104. And so we won't ignore people who do the wrong thing and destroy the lives of others. What we'll do is step in early and turn their lives around.
Deputy Opposition Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. Treasurer, last Thursday you told the Chamber that you have a strong physical strategy while failing to be upfront with Territorians about the capital works that are being scrapped from the budget. Madam Speaker, before I ask my question, I seek leave to table the assessment of Country Liberal Party 2024 election commitments completed by the Department of Treasury and Finance.
Is leave granted? Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Treasurer, which capital commitments are you planning to scrap to meet your election commitments?
Treasurer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Daly for his question. And yes, since coming into government, we've been looking at the capital works program that was put in place by the Labor government. And what's very, very interesting about that capital works program, Madam Speaker, is the gaps in that capital works program and the unfunded liabilities moving into the future 3 and 4 years that were unfunded that Labor were pushing ahead with, Madam Speaker. And what we're doing, Madam Speaker, is we're looking at that capital works program and we're reprioritising that program to deal with things that matter for Territorians that are going to benefit all Territorians, Madam Speaker. Because if you look at some of the capital programs that Labor were managing over the last 4 years, we can rattle off a few. We could start with the no-shade shade structure and the money that costs and the money that costs ongoing to maintain. But let's look at the Tiger Bretton overpass. $65 million you put that up for, and then it came in at just over 100, and now we're talking $165 million, Madam Speaker. Labor don't know how to manage that capital works program. But what Labor did do, and they stood up every year for the 4 years that I've been in this parliament, and they lauded their record spend on infrastructure. Well, Madam Speaker, I've seen how the infrastructure program works and what they were doing, and really it was a bit of a pie in the sky, Madam Speaker. It was a bit of a fairy tale, because what they were doing is putting new projects up year after year and bigger and better projects according to them, but they weren't funded correctly, Madam Speaker. There was no cash there to deliver these projects ongoing. So they stood here in this parliament year after year.
Take your seat, Minister. What's your point of order, member for Daly?
Thank you. 110 relevance, Madam Speaker. The question was pretty direct. Which capital commitments are you planning to scrap?
Good question.
He's answering the question. Minister, you've got the call.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'll carry on with my response. Yes, we're looking at all the capital commitments in the entire capital program to see what we actually can deliver for the money that we actually do have, because Labor was spending money that it didn't have. When you look at the capital works program, all the promises that were made across the board, the money was not there to deliver them, Madam Speaker. And that's what was putting the Territory fiscal position in the spot that it was in, Madam Speaker. They were spending money that they didn't have, and they were using federal grant money to prop up their budget. So the money was coming in from the federal government, they were using it to cover the gaps, but then they couldn't deliver on the projects that were in the capital works program, Madam Speaker. So they were doing this year after year.
Take your seat, Minister. Point of order, member for Daly.
110 relevance. The question wasn't about the projects that Labor delivered. It was a direct question about
yes, we know the question. He's still got 23 seconds.
Thank you.
Relevance, Minister.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I suppose, yeah, a good answer to the issue around the fiscal responsibility of Labor. In just 8 years, Madam Speaker, they took us from $1.97 billion in debt to $11 billion in debt. 8 years, Madam Speaker, and that's off the back of their program. That is a 560% increase in the Territory's debt, Madam Speaker.
Member for Fong Lim.
Madam Speaker, thank you. My question is to the Chief Minister. Chief Minister, the CLP's new ram raid legislation passed the House last week. Over the weekend, a stolen vehicle was used in an attempted ram raid of a business in my Fong Lim electorate in Bishop Street, Woolner. I understand the business owner was on site at the time and chased the alleged offenders away. However, the damage bill was significant. Chief Minister, how will our new ram raid offence help prevent such incidents from occurring again?
Chief Minister.
Thank you very much, Member for Fong Lim. And like all of us on this side of the House, our communities just want action. They're sick of the talk, they're sick of the daily struggle and the concerns around law and order. They want the government of the day to provide an environment where they can operate their businesses in Woolner without having to worry about their fences being bowled down, their vehicles and trucks being stolen, or their front windows and glass being smashed in. And this is the expectation of people right across the Territory, whether you're in Alice Springs or Tennant Creek or Katherine or in Palmerston and Darwin. People just want to go to work, not waiting for that shocking phone call in the middle of the night by police letting them know that something's gone wrong. And that is unfortunately what's happened in your electorate in Fong Lim with that incident in Woolner. And so by having standalone ram raid legislation, which has been supported by our police, but also by industry, I think of the time we stood with Darlene Chin from Attitude for Men with her beautiful new shop with, panes of glass right up to the ceiling, right there on Smith Street, got ram raided, and just the whole thing was crushed to the ground, shattering with it the dream of having this beautiful business in the heart of our CBD. And so by backing in people like our police and the Property Council who called for ram raid legislation to come into effect, what we've been able to do is create a standalone offence for our police. So prior to just last week, member for Fong Lim, police would have to choose from a range of different offences to try and best fit the particular type of ram raid at the time. And what we've done is streamline that process and made it easier for our police and made it easier for our courts, because these types of matters can be heard in both the local and the Supreme Courts, giving greater flexibility and access to justice to that process. And so ram raids is just one way in which we can make a meaningful difference in people's lives. It's a meaningful way in which we can support our police, but also act as a deterrent. It sends a very clear message about our community's expectations that this is not okay. And again, I mentioned it earlier in my response, 26 ram raids since the 1st of July, 6 on police vehicles. The cost of this to our community, to the trauma to the victims, is too much to bear. We cannot continue as a community to accept this level of violation that we're experiencing. And I know that on radio last week, Senior Sergeant from Strikeforce Trident, Dale Motta Bernard, said that the damage bill for that spate of thefts of the school bus stolen from Adelaide River that came into Darwin was estimated at about $300,000 and rising. And that's a cost Territorians can't afford and shouldn't have to pay under a Labor government who's ignored crime for far too long. But our actions speak louder than Labor's words ever did, Madam Speaker.
Member for Gwaja.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Correctional Services. Minister, you have repeatedly failed to answer questions about the cost of your prison plan. The member for Karama even acknowledges that you have failed a little bit, I quote. When will you come clean to Territorians, Minister, about how you're going to pay for your plan on top of the $280 million that is already unbudgeted commitments?
Minister for Correctional Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I just want to start by saying one statement that everyone I speak to in relation to corrections agrees with, that the Labor government has left us with a correctional crisis right across the Northern Territory. It doesn't matter where you live. If you're involved in the correctional system, you're in crisis, Madam Speaker. And that's whether you're a prisoner because you're stuck in a cell with 15 or 16 other people. That's because you're a prisoner who's unable to access rehabilitation programs or training or skills because you are stuck in an overcrowded prison. That's because you be a prison officer having to guard these people, putting your own life at risk and a serious chance of suffering a real injury. And we've heard just recently that the corrections officers are injured going to work. That's because the Labor government have failed Territorians. They have failed the correctional system, not to mention, Madam Speaker, the police officers who have to deal with the overcrowding in the watch houses. These watch houses are designed to put criminals in who have been picked up on the street to process, to work out whether they're going to be charged or not charged, and yet they're dealing with up to 50 prisoners in those watch houses, Madam Speaker. It's because the Labor government created a correctional crisis right across the Northern Territory. Madam Speaker, for 8 years they ignored the problem and they chose to do nothing. They chose to let these prisoners rot in overcrowded cells, not access to rehabilitation, Madam Speaker. We know that 75% of people who are in jail go back into jail, and that is what caused one of our issues, because the Labor government failed to acknowledge...
Take your seat, Minister. What's your point of order? Member for Gwaja.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The point of order is Standing Order 110. Minister, I've asked you a very direct question. You've made a public announcement to the community around your plan. We're asking how is that plan going to be paid for and what is the cost of that, along
He's
with the
answering the
$280
question.
million that you've been
Member
unable
for
to tell
Guajar, please
Territorians
take your seat.
where it's
Minister,
been going,
you have
or are
the
you going to
call.
continue to fail?
You still have over a minute to answer.
I am getting to that question, but I just want to really state that this Labor government have failed Territorians. We've implemented a plan that's going to immediately deal with the relief of the overcrowded prison system in relation to the watch houses, because those watch houses are there to keep Territorians safe. That's what this Labor government have failed to do, to keep Territorians safe. And, Madam Speaker, the CLP government aren't embarrassed, and we don't apologise for these strong decisions we're making because the Labor government have failed Territorians right.
Take your seat, Minister. What's your point of order, Opposition Leader?
110 relevance. We don't want an apology. We want to know how much it's going to cost.
He's answering the question. He's still got
Speaker,
44
it's
seconds.
amazing how the opposition don't even want to apologise to the people they failed, to the people they failed who put into cells, to the people who they failed to protect. It's amazing that the opposition, that's probably why they're in opposition, because they failed to listen and they failed to protect Territorians right across the board. Madam Speaker, these costs are going to be absorbed inside the operating budget of the correctional system. This is not going to be extra money on top of it. And then what we are going to do is build some prisons, and we're going to do the standard operating procedure. We're going to build a business case, and we're going to put it to Cabinet to make up with an informed decision, because we know the Labor government overspend in everything they do.
Member for Karama.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Corrections. And thank you for your excellent answer to the previous question. Minister, yesterday, after just a few weeks in office, you, along with the Corrections Commissioner and the Police Commissioner, unveiled the CLP's Corrections Infrastructure Plan to tackle overcrowding, focus on rehabilitation and to give police their watch houses back. Minister, can you outline the CLP's three-step approach to addressing the Gammon correction crisis left by Labor in the short, medium and long term?
Minister for Corrections, less commentary from the opposition leader,
and I know that this issue is very important to you because the Labor government particularly failed the people in your electorate. Crime is rampant in your electorate, in fact right across the Northern Territory, not to mention my colleagues from Alice Springs, where crime seems to become the norm, Madam Speaker. That is the problem. Crime is not the norm. You should be safe in your own home, and people out there, Territorians, deserve to be, have consequences. If you break the law, there should be a consequence. So what we're going to do over on this side of the chamber, we're going to make sure that there are consequences if you break the law, and we're going to build up a plan, which we released yesterday, to make sure that those prisoners are held accountable for their actions, to make sure their access to rehabilitation and training, and to make sure that the prison officers who look after them go to work safely, come home safely, not to mention the frontline police officers, and I want a big shout out to them because we all know that my father was a police officer. I know how committed they are, can come home safely. So this is about the bigger picture here. This is about protecting Territorians at home and protecting Territorians at work. Madam Speaker, dealing with the corrections is being a big issue because it's been failed so badly and for so long by the Labor government. They failed to adequately provide for increasing prison numbers. What they did is they put prisoners' officers at risk, and more importantly, Madam Speaker, they put prisoners at risk because those prisoners can't go and access rehabilitation and training and sentenced to a skill in prison industries because they're overcrowded and they're stuck in these little cells which are not designed for that many people because the Labor government dropped the ball and didn't protect them, to become better citizens, didn't allow them to access, to come out of their custody as a better person, to be able to have a job, go back to family life, and to make a normal and happy contribution to our community. Madam Speaker, our plan talks about immediately converting the Old Don Dale into a 50-bed low open facility for adult males, but more importantly, Madam Speaker, to move those young offenders into a purpose-built, brand new facility to allow them to rehabilitation and training. Not to mention that we are already 2 years late and about $60 million over budget in that particular new youth justice facility. So when the Labor government talk about cutting the spending, well, they're the ones who spent $60 million more than they should have, and that's only in one facility. not to mention the overspend at the Youth Justice Facility in Alice Springs, which I think was about $13 million to start with, and now it's up to $32 million. We're going to expand the Alice Springs Correctional Centre with a new 96 modular block. We're going to create work camps in Katherine and Darwin. We're going to construct a 150-bed women's prison in Holt.
Time's expired, Minister. Please take your seat. Member for Guadjo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my question is to the Minister for the Public Service. Minister, your government's first act was to create a top-heavy public sector with 6 new government CEOs. Yeah, and I pick up on the interjections because they clearly think it's funny. On top of your $280 million worth of unfunded, unbudgeted commitments, Minister, which agencies have had their funding cut to pay for new executive contracts, and what have you cut to create more government CEOs?
Minister for the Public Sector.
Right. Given that we have not been here that long, I can guarantee you right now there will be no one that is being cut, no services that will be cut. We have got, the agencies are smaller. Most agencies have one minister to that agency. They're not big agencies like the previous government had. Makes these agencies a lot more agile. And there is a huge focus on the technical expertise in these departments. So, I'll basically be leaving it there, but I will be letting you know that these agencies will...
Take your seat, Minister. Point of order, Member for Guadjo.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Minister for the Public Service, the question is very direct.
Look,
if you're not doing it, then where is the money
Member
coming
for
from
Guadjo,
to pay for the additional public service?
The Minister is 50 seconds into her answer. Please take your seat. Minister, you've got the call.
Thank you. And as I said, there will be no cuts. We are reprioritising funding. As I've said, the agencies are smaller. There will be a focus on the technical area expertise in these departments, and there will be they will be far more agile. We certainly, after listening to you for the last 4 years in government, will not be taking any advice from you. 19 of the last 23 years, we are now dealing with the crime crisis, the crisis that we've got right across every single department, because of the...
Minister, take your seat. Member for Guadjo, what's your point of order? It better not be
Standing
relevant.
order 110. This was a direct question about public servants. I know the only single issue that One Trick Pony can speak about is crime, but we want to know about the...
disorderly. Take your seat, please. Minister, you have the call. You've got 1.5 minutes. Half your time to go.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm 100% not struggling, Member for Guadjo. I can assure you of that right now. But what we will not be doing is taking any information or any advice from the opposition. We are absolutely very supportive of our public service.
Minister,
and we
can you
absolutely
take your seat, please. Opposition Leader, you are pushing it. Can you just tone it down, please? Give the Minister some respect. Minister, you have the call.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And yes, I have got 1 minute remaining to answer the question. And as I've said, we've got smaller agencies, making them more agile, focusing on their technical expertise. Very proud of the CEOs in all of our departments who work extremely hard. And all of the public servants as well. There will be no cuts, and we are very happy to have reshaped that public service to build on our priorities, which were reducing crime, rebuilding the economy and restoring our lifestyle. So there will be no cuts across any of these departments, and we will continue to work with those CEOs in departments to bring our initiatives to government. So, and to the people of the Territory. Thank you.
Member for Goyder. Oh, sorry, Member for Casuarina. My apologies.
My question is to the Minister for Logistics and Infrastructure. Minister, our bus drivers and the union have reported a number of dangerous attacks have occurred whilst they are driving the buses. Can you please update the Assembly on the actions that the government is taking to make our bus drivers safe at work?
Minister for Logistics and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Casuarina for the question, because this is very important in the member for Casuarina's electorate, plus some of those people who have electorates out in Palmerston. And we see a petition tabled today by the member for Casuarina from those bus drivers who have been suffering under this crime issue for a number of years now. And, Madam Speaker, the bus drivers and the TWU came to Territory Labor in 2022 with this issue. They raised the issue of crime and antisocial behaviour and safety on those buses. And it took until the start of 2024, Madam Speaker, before Territory Labor actually decided to take any action. But when they did take action, Madam Speaker, I must say that it was pretty slow action, because not much had taken place between January 2024 and June 2024. I believe only 17 screens had been fitted in that entire time. And since we've come into government, Madam Speaker, in August, that has jumped from 17 to 37. And what we've seen over the last few weeks, and I've had members from the TWU in my office. I actually sat down with them and spoke to those members, and I spoke to Bamel, who was the driver who people have probably seen was subjected to that person who climbed over the screen and kicked him in the head whilst he was driving that bus down the highway at 80 kilometres an hour with people on it. That had the opportunity to be so tragic, Madam Speaker, that it's not funny. I commend Bamel and his efforts to keep that bus straight, to keep it on the road, to not crash the thing with all those passengers on board or run off the road and run into somebody else. His actions need to be commended. But we listened to Bamel and we listened to the TWU. So we immediately, as a government, spoke to CDC and asked them to expedite the installation of those screens. Since we spoke to them, we've seen that immediate pickup in those screens being put into buses, but sadly another incident just last week where a person climbed over a screen and tried to stab a driver. Luckily he was stopped at a stop at the time. But again, put yourself, I ask anybody in this chamber, Madam Speaker, to put themselves in that person's shoes, sitting there trying to do a job and someone climbs over a screen with a knife and tries to stab them. But we've since then found alternatives for materials. We're working with the department. The department have been very proactive on sourcing contractors to get in and help CDC install these screens. We've put security guards on the buses that don't have screens to protect those drivers, to protect the community and, of course, protect Territorians.
Member for Daly.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Arts. Minister, in the lead up to the election, the Chief Minister made a commitment to Music NT to provide financial support to NT musicians to perform and showcase their talent at festivals, events and venues across Australia and abroad. Minister, what are the details of your commitment and when will you deliver on it? Or have you turned your back on musicians across the Territory?
Minister for Arts.
Speaker, and thanks Member for Daly for the question. So there is no plan from CLP at this stage to make any changes to the previous arrangements, and also we will be looking forward to make sure, like I think we are going to support, and the commitment from the CLP is that we are going to support the musicians and I think people from the arts background to have the opportunity to showcase their talents, and we will continue to come up with the options about, like I think, how we are going to support them.
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
No, there's no point of order, Member for Daly. He's been on his feet for 30 seconds. Please let the Minister continue.
Yep. And also, I think, again, like when it comes to the arts portfolio, there are like range of things that we are supporting the Territorians to showcase their talents, and also when the talented artists across from the Territory to give that opportunity to demonstrate that. And also recently, I attended the first Arts Award very recently, and it was It was really great to see about, like, I think the artists from across the territory are coming together and I think showcasing their talents. And it was.
What's the new commitment? That's what we're asking.
Member for Grantia, please stop the interjections. Minister, you have the call. Continue.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Speaker. So when it comes to the new commitments, one other thing the Labor government is so interested in the previous Labor government is very interested in the CLP commitments and the plans because they didn't have anything to done over the last few years, and they are looking for new ideas that we are coming up with. So that means like they can add some questions.
Minister, take your seat. Member for Daly, what's your point of order?
Point of order 110, relevance. Madam Speaker, the question was pretty direct and it was asking about the details of CLP's commitment.
Okay. Minister, you've got a minute and a half, plenty of time to answer the question. Your call.
Madam Speaker. So again, like starting where I stopped, like the musicians were struggling under the failed economy from the Labor, and I think they were not getting that opportunity to perform. So what we are looking on is about, like, I think, to have a better economy, to attract more people coming into the territory, to have like a better venue for these musicians to perform. And yes, we are working on a plan, and I think when it's the right time to present to the other members of this chamber, that will be introduced, and I think that will be announced as well. So we are working on that plan. And also, it's about like the commitment from CLP about the.
The Minister is making relevant comments in response to your question. If this is about relevance, sit down before you even ask.
He is, and he's talking about a plan, but we're asking the detail of those commitments for the plan, which he hasn't outlined. And
Minister,
that's the point
you
of
have
order.
the call. Please take your seat. Member for Daly.
Thanks, Speaker. So again, like I think I don't know how to come up with a plan when we are working on the plan. And I think another thing the Labor government is, no, again, like the previous Labor government was really good at that, and that's like the reason why they've been reduced to the 4 numbers in this chamber. And again, like we are working on that plan when it's the right time, when the CLP government feels like I think when it's right time to announce, it will be announced. We are currently looking on to the suits of things that we are announcing about like the crime and safety. So now we'll be moving on to the economy when it comes to the lifestyle. Labor is going to see our plans, which is going to be supported well by the Territorians, similar to what they're seeing across the social media and from the people now, that they are really supporting CLP.
Member for Drysdale.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my question is to the Chief Minister and Minister for Police. Chief Minister, the CLP was elected on a platform of reducing crime and ensuring the safety of Territorians. Chief Minister, can you please outline to the House the immediate action the CLP government has taken to strengthen police presence on the streets, and including the streets of Drysdale, and make police more visible to the community?
Chief Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member for Drysdale and my Assistant Minister for Police for this really important question, because I know more than anyone that he backs in the men and women in blue to be doing their job, because he is a former serviceman himself, having served our nation in the Army. And so his respect for our frontline police officers is profound, Madam Speaker, and for good reason, because they are exceptional. And that is why, Madam Speaker, when I met with the Police Commissioner the first day of our government, and I told him that we back them in, that we will give them the powers they need to make Territorians safe, to make the Territory a safer place to live, work, visit and invest. And as a result of that change of government and that support for our police, we're now seeing more police out on the street than we did under Labor. More police out on the street because they are supported to do their job, Madam Speaker. And so I'm very pleased to give your community, member for Drysdale, an update on all Territorians that in just 2 short months, there are now 63 police officers that are in uniform back out on the front line. 63 police. That's on top of the recruitment we're doing. We've also got an additional 3 police vehicles that were unmarked. They are now marked, meaning more visibility on our roads, greater deterrence, more opportunity for our police. And our police are now even utilising magnets on police cars so that when they're covert, they can remove the magnets, and when they're not, they're out so that the community knows our police are there. And it's changes like that that make a big difference on the ground. And just 3 weeks into our government, Madam Speaker, I had a member of the Palmerston community come to me, member for Drysdale, and she said that for years she had not felt safe to drive at night, and that she would make her adult children drive her anywhere she had to go at night time, dinner with friends, a movie, the simplest of things. And she said to me, and that was just 3 weeks into our government, member for Drysdale, she said, "Chief Minister, tonight I am driving myself into the city for the first time in years because I have my life back. I feel confident. I've seen so many police out on the street, and she's living her life how she deserves to live it. Something as simple as backing in the blue to be able to do their job." And when under Labor, we were on track for 199,000 calls to the emergency centre, it's little wonder why our police felt like their Labor had turned their back on them. We had nearly 300 police assaulted from 1 July last year to 31 March this year, and overtime was up 7%. Well, under the CLP, our police know where they stand, we're our government, and that is number one because community safety is our first priority.
Member for Nightcliff.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have a question for the Minister for Disability. We heard last week that your government is moving the children in detention in Alice Springs to Darwin. We know that from the latest report from the NT Children's Commissioner that 77% of young people in detention have mental health needs or a diagnosed cognitive disability. Minister, are any of those children being moved engaged with NDIS services in Alice Springs? And if so, how are you ensuring that their access to those supports continue in Darwin without interruption?
Minister for Disability Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So when it comes to the children that's currently in youth detention centre, so there are systems in place to do the assessments for these children. And if there are, and also without making a decision about I think moving any children, also I'm not sure where exactly from member for Nightcliff got this information from about moving children as well. But when the plan is fully revealed, and if there is a scenario about the children from the youth detention center need to be moved, and there will be mechanism in place to make sure I think the current assessment will be thoroughly looked on, and also will look on about I think what are the supports they need in place if they're going to be moving to a new location, and there will be assessment that's going to be done about I think what supports that we can provide to these children that need support as well. And again, I strongly agree with member for Nightcliff that there are children in these facilities that require that ongoing support, and there are children with FASD and also other comorbid mental health conditions as well. And we as a government will be looking on about I think how we are going to support these children to rehabilitate, diagnose, and to provide that support to these children when they need that support. And it won't be similar to what the previous government was doing about I think continuous lockdowns in the youth detention center with limited resources, and also about I think looking on what they call expert advice, but I think when it comes to very limited substance to those expert advice, and it about I think getting the specialist for that assessment, have a treatment plan or a care plan in place, and working with the youth workers, which is under the Department of Corrections now. That means I think there is less burden for the territory families to make sure I think they can support the children that's outside the correctional facilities, and the new corrections department will be able to provide that support right through the time that I think they're going to be in, and also that will be an exit plan where the support workers or the youth support workers will be able to work through about identifying the needs of support when they're coming out, and also have that plan in place. And again, when it comes to the new plan about I think if there is a need for moving the children from one facility to another, there is kind of I think current plans about I think how they're going to look into it, and also there will be about I think new measures that we are going to implement that will support these children to have the rehabilitation.
Take your seat, Minister. Member for Nightcliff, point of order.
I'm not sure if I can use Standing Order 110 just to ask for clarification. I just want to understand the current, if they're on current NDIS supports, is that a new assessment that will happen in Darwin?
Member for Nightcliff, you can't ask another question. Just,
it's the same one. I'm trying to clarify the answer.
But again, like,
Let the Minister continue.
so I think many members that don't understand is about, like, I think for people with disability, it's a journey. And I think in that journey, there will be, like, I think, new additional information that coming to them as well. So if there are opportunity for new assessment and if their clinical team decide things like I think they need that, there will be definitely like new assessment added. And we will support those children who need that support in their journey and will be supported throughout.
Member for Goyder.
Madam Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Agriculture and Fisheries. Minister, my electorate, as is yours and many others across the Territory, is home to many keen hunters. Minister, before the election, the CLP committed to expand access to Harrison Dam Conservation Area and help restore the Territory lifestyle by providing greater access and hunting opportunities. Can you outline to the Assembly what has been announced, what is currently happening and how it has been achieved?
Minister for Agriculture and Fisheries.
Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I think we all know that this is a question dear to my heart. I have been to Harrison Dam on many occasions and in fact I've stayed overnight there. I've spent many, many hours there. But Madam Speaker, before I want to get on to, I want to talk about our CLP plan in general. We want to make sure that the Territory is safe. We want to rebuild our economy and then we want to restore our lifestyle. And what we're doing in this particular occasion is restoring our lifestyle. But we can't do that, Madam Speaker, until it's a safe place to live. We can't afford to spend the money and go out and do our recreational activities if you're going to come home to your home that's broken into or your business is broken into. Madam Speaker, and why I'm getting to this is because we are a tourism town. Lots of people come to the Northern Territory for tourism, for the outback adventure, and they go goose hunting. Or in Harrison Dam, they also go pig hunting. So what we want to do, Madam Speaker, is to be able to keep the Territory a safe place, rebuild our economy. And why I'm mentioning that, Madam Speaker, is because these tourists spend a lot of money in our economy. We know the Labor government have failed Territorians and blown our economy and just completely squandered taxpayers' money on these pet projects. But, Madam Speaker, what we want to do, we want to make sure that Territory businesses, the mums and dads out there who operate tourism businesses, have an opportunity to access these people who come here to spend their money. And we all know, Madam Speaker, they're not going to come here if it's not a safe place. So, Madam Speaker, Harrison Dam is a great area just south of Darwin on the plains of the Adelaide River. And at the moment, Madam Speaker, there's the dam wall, which is there where people go hunting, and there's also a lagoon off to the right side of it when you go in, called Beatrice Billabong. That goes down, and there's arms that go off that billabong, and what that does, Madam Speaker, is stops access to a lot of the southern side of the reserve because you can't get there. And we all know, Madam Speaker, that you can't walk through that sort of water up to waist deep because you might not come out the other side. Literally, you'll lose a leg. Yeah, at a minimum. So what we're going to do, Madam Speaker, is to restore that lifestyle. We're going to make access into that reserve bigger and better. It's not only for the recreational hunters, Madam Speaker, it's also for the land management and weed control of that area. Because at the moment, Madam Speaker, the rangers can't even get there to do spraying, to do feral animal control. So what we're going to do is actually make the reserve bigger and better for hunters and recreational people and for land management in relation to allowing the rangers to go out and do the job, which they do a great job already, spraying weeds and looking after the environment, which is vital for recreational hunting because no one wants to go there and see a mess. No one wants to go there and see weeds growing through the roof because the birds don't even go there when it's that case. So we want to make sure that the whole of Harrison Dam is ready to go, and we're going to increase access to recreational hunting.
Member for Johnston.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question's for the Minister for Corrections. Minister for Corrections, we understand that all the children and young people currently held in Alice Springs are being transferred to Darwin. My question is that, first of all, is it correct that in the future there will be no youth detention centre in Alice Springs and all children and young people will be held here in the top end? What is in place to ensure that these children get appropriate access to legal support and there are not even more extended times on remand, and what measures are being put in place to ensure that these children and young people can remain connected to family and country? Thank you.
Minister for Correctional Services.
Madam Speaker, thank you for that question. And I just want to clarify one thing, Madam Speaker. I've heard in the media that reports that the young offenders are going to be transferred to the old Don Dale. That's not correct. The young offenders are going to be transferred to the brand new state-of-art facility, which isn't open yet, which is open in November. So the children or the young offenders from Alice Springs aren't going into the Don Dale. The Don Dale is going to be closed as a youth detention facility, and low rated men are going to go there. So what we're going to do is use that only on a temporary basis. This is again because the Labor government dropped the ball for the last 8 years, and we know that you can't just pop up a prison overnight, because we need to spend taxpayers' money wisely, unlike the Labor government, who had 8 years, ignored all the problems, and now the Labor government have gone to the other side, and we are cleaning up the mess. We are making the strong decisions to fix the correctional crisis, to make the Territory a safer place. So the young offenders are going to be coming up to Darwin. There is going to be a facility in Alice Springs, to answer your question, which is the Paper Bart facility, where there's going to be a remand centre. So the young offenders, if they're arrested in Alice Springs, they will go into that facility, and then they can go to court immediately, but for any significant amount of time they'll be transferred to Darwin. So to answer your question, there will be a facility where young offenders can stay in Alice Springs, but more importantly, there will also be boot camps and youth justice facilities where there'll be more alternatives for the government, more alternatives for the courts to be able to put these children through rehabilitation programs. Because that's what we are focusing on, Madam Speaker, is making these children come out of the other side a better person. Because we know, as the Chief Minister said earlier, Madam Speaker, that under Labor, these children were destined to go into the big house, to the big jail, to the adults' jail. What we want to do, Madam Speaker, we want to give these young offenders a better opportunity to make better decisions and become better people. So we want to make sure that these young people have access to rehabilitation and to training and to the care that they need, which my colleague just spoke about, and having a centralised...
Minister, point of order, member for Johnston.
Standing Order 110 relevance. My question, thank you for answering some of the question, but my question was what will be put in place to ensure that the young people who are transferred to Darwin can remain connected to their family and to country?
Your call, Minister. Was it your point of order, Opposition Leader?
So thank you, Madam Speaker. And there are some myths about this in relation to family, but I've asked some questions about that. Madam Speaker, for the last 4 months, there's only been 4 unassisted family visits to these young offenders in Alice Springs. 4. So that means there's 1 per month. What we want to do as the Country Liberal Party, we want to make sure that these young offenders have better access to their family by providing electronic means, by tablets, by social media and by FaceTime. I understand there's some 6,000 phone calls a month for these children to their families. We want to make that easier and better to be able to have better connections to their family, because this Labor government neglected these children. Their policies were just lock them up, lock them up.
Member for Fanny Bay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is for the Minister for Veterans. Minister, in my electorate of Fanny Bay, we are constantly reminded of how important protecting our country is. Fanny Bay is host to the heritage-listed areas that contains World War II fortifications and the Darwin Military Museum, something we're very proud of. It is a harrowing reminder of our serving defence members and what they've gone through to protect our nation. Minister, what is the CLP government doing to support veterans of the Northern Territory to ensure that we are honouring their service and restoring their lifestyle?
Minister for Veterans.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and Member for Fanny Bay. So it is a fact that every year we witness multiple military exercises like Pitch Black, where the sounds of over 100 fighter jets stream across our city, with 20 participating nations from across the world. So the reality of what it feels in a real combat is only really known by those that have served to protect both us and our allies, our veterans, similar to our member for Drysdale. So our veterans deserve to be honoured, because without their sacrifice and service, we would not be afforded the freedoms that we have today. There is no great honour than to serve your country so that our children and their children can have the rights of a democratic and free society. The Country Liberal government deeply honours our veterans and is committed to supporting the well-being of our veterans. As the Minister for Veterans, I'll be deeply honoured to attend my first Remembrance Day this year on November 11, to both honour those that died in battle and to talk with our veterans about what we are doing to support them and to listen to what we can do better. We have commenced the Veteran Health and Wellbeing Grant, a program with a budget of $120,000 designed to empower veteran organizations and community groups to deliver vital services and activities. Operation Thrive, a comprehensive initiative aimed at improving outcomes for veterans in the Territory, is our continued testament to our recognition of the unique needs faced by veterans and their families. Operation Thrive focuses on 3 key areas. The first key area is transition, providing support and resources to facilitate smooth transition from military to civilian life. The second key area is education and employment, of offering opportunities for veterans to enhance their skills and pursue meaningful careers. Third key area, health and well-being, ensuring access to quality healthcare, mental health support, and recognition for their service. Significant investment is being made in specialist GP training for veteran health, mental health initiatives such as #CheckYourMates, suicide prevention campaign, and employment programs like partnership with Soldier in Darwin. I have arranged meetings with both the Minister for Veteran Affairs and the Shadow Minister for Veteran Affairs to both discuss the Royal Commission report into defence and veteran suicide and to explore what we can do better to ensure that our veterans are supported in a meaningful way. We, the CLP, have concrete actions, substantial financial investments, and work in collaborative partnerships with a genuine commitment to ensuring that veterans receive the respect, support, and opportunities they deserve. We, the CLP government, understand that defence life can be challenging and are dedicated to providing the necessary supports for the veteran community. Through these ongoing efforts, the Northern Territory is striving to create an environment where veterans can thrive and continue to make valuable contributions to society.
Minister. Member for Gwadja.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Correctional Services. Minister, you have promised Territorians that the adult prisoners you are moving to the old Dondale facility will be there for a maximum period of 2 years. Minister, will you give a guarantee to the residents of Northcrest that these prisoners will be removed from their backyard by October 2026 into new and upgraded facilities elsewhere?
Minister for Correctional Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I do rise to answer this question because, as I said earlier, the Labor government have left us with a correctional crisis right across the Northern Territory. For 8 years, they failed Territorians. They failed to do anything about the prisons overcrowding and overflowing into our watch houses, which has affected the frontline officers who are working day in, day out to protect us. So we have got a plan. We've got a plan to make sure that the Territory is a safer place. We're going to rebuild our economy and we're going to restore our lifestyle, Madam Speaker. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Our plan talks about having 200 men in that facility for 2 years. Our overall plan, Madam Speaker, is to have Holtz as our correctional precinct. That's where our correctional precinct's going to be. We're going to move all the prisons to that area. We're going to have our boot camps there, and we're going to have our rehabilitation service there because, unlike Labor government, Madam Speaker, we want to focus on rehabilitation and make the prisoners come out a better people and better for our community to be able to come back out and not go back in, not to re-offend, because we know under Labor 75% of people re-offended. So, Madam Speaker, our plan is to deliver a correctional precinct at Holtz, which includes moving the temporary Dondale, which is the 200 men out there, in 2 years' time. Thank you.
Any questions? Member for Goyder.
My question is to the Minister for Mining and Energy. Minister for Mining and Energy, can you please update the House on the critically important developments in the Beetaloo sub-basin and what this could mean to the NT economy?
Minister for Mining and Energy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I can assure the House that we are absolutely committed and focused on rebuilding our economy, providing jobs and opportunities right across the Northern Territory. And I know that people in this chamber have benefited from those jobs, people and their friends, their partners working there, because that's what it's about. It's about rebuilding our economy and providing jobs, jobs, jobs. I think we've all heard that one before, but that's what it's about. We want to deal with that. We want to make sure that the Territory is a better place to live and to work. I know that we've introduced some legislation about our home builders because, Madam Speaker, what we want to do is to grow our homegrown people. We want to give people who come to the Northern Territory the most competitive advantage to build a home here in the Northern Territory. Because we know, Madam Speaker, if you build a home here, you're likely to stay here. Or if you meet a partner, you're likely to stay here. And once you build a house here, Madam Speaker, it's very hard to go and move that house. What it does is goes and makes sure our tradies have got jobs and make sure the tradies' partners can stay here, make the children go to school. So the flow-on effect, Madam Speaker, of the Beetaloo is jobs right across the Northern Territory, because we know that rebuilding our economy is crucial if the Territory is to continue. Madam Speaker, I was born here, I know the Chief Minister was born here, lots of people were born here, and the Territory is a place worth fighting for. And that's one of the reasons I'm here, Madam Speaker, because I want the Territory to be a land of opportunity, what it was, what it should be. And, Madam Speaker, the Beetaloo and the jobs and the money that comes out of the Beetaloo is crucial to that plan. Madam Speaker, we know that there could be an additional 13,000 direct and indirect jobs over a 25-year period to deal with that. We know, Madam Speaker, that an additional $17.5 billion of real output over the next 25 years. Then, Madam Speaker, an extra $3.7 billion in taxation to the Territory Government over a 25-year period. Madam Speaker, $3.7 billion in revenue, in tax. Madam Speaker, ask yourself, who pays for the police officers? Who pays for the hospitals? Who pays for the frontline people out there protecting us? It's the taxpayer, through revenue raising, through royalties, and $3.7 billion paid into direct revenue to Territory-owned source revenue, Madam Speaker. This is not federal funding. This is onshore gas paying into the Treasurer's pocket so he can make the Territory a safer place to be, which makes him happy. That's what gas is all about. Gas is there to provide jobs, open up the hospitals and make the Territory a safer place.
Leader of Opposition Business.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.